I'm Bethany, 34, a former music teacher from Colorado, whose world shattered into a million pieces last spring. My sweet 5-year-old daughter, Lily, fought leukemia with the heart of a lion, but in the end, cancer was stronger than her tiny body. While I stood alone at her funeral clutching her favorite teddy bear, my husband Michael wasn't there supporting me. He was on a so-called emergency business trip. Or so I thought until I found the credit card statement showing charges from a luxury resort in the Maldives and received that fateful phone call confirming he was there with another woman. He had no idea what was waiting for him when he returned. Before I continue my story, let me know where you're watching from in the comments and subscribe for more real-life stories that show the resilience of the human spirit. I never imagined my life would take such a devastating turn. Before everything fell apart, I was living what seemed like a perfect life. I'd always been passionate about music, which led me to become an elementary school music teacher. The joy on children's faces when they mastered their first song was the greatest reward I could ask for. I met Michael at a charity concert for the Denver Symphony Orchestra. I was there with some colleagues from school, and he was attending with clients from his investment banking firm. Our eyes locked across the reception hall during intermission, and he made his way over to introduce himself. Tall, with dark hair and confident blue eyes, Michael was charming and genuinely interested in my passion for music education. By the end of the night, he had my phone number and a promise for dinner the following weekend. Our relationship moved quickly. Michael swept me off my feet with romantic gestures, weekend trips to mountain retreats, and his unwavering interest in my work with the children. Within 6 months, he proposed during a private helicopter tour over the Rocky Mountains at sunset. I said yes, without hesitation, believing I'd found my soulmate. "When you know," my mother said when I called her with the news, though I could hear the slight concern in her voice about the whirlwind nature of our relationship. Our wedding was elegant but intimate, held at a historic hotel in downtown Denver. Michael spared no expense insisting that this was our one special day and deserved to be perfect. Looking back at those photos now feels like looking at strangers, two people with bright eyes and hopeful smiles, who had no idea what was coming. We settled into a beautiful craftsman-style home in one of Denver's nicest neighborhoods. Michael's career was thriving, and after much discussion, I decided to take a break from teaching to focus on starting a family. That decision was easier because Michael's income was more than enough to support us comfortably. "You deserve to focus on what will make you happiest," he told me, kissing my forehead, "and I can't wait to see you as a mother." But starting our family proved more difficult than we anticipated. For 2 years we tried without success. Each month brought disappointment and increasing feelings of inadequacy on my part. Michael was patient at first, holding me through my tears and assuring me that it would happen when the time was right. But as the months dragged on, I started noticing small changes in his attitude. "Maybe we should consider other options," he suggested, after a particularly heart-wrenching negative test. I knew he meant adoption or IVF, but the way he said it with slight irritation in his voice stung more than he realized. When I finally saw those 2 pink lines on the pregnancy test, I couldn't believe it. I arranged a special dinner and revealed the news to Michael with a tiny pair of baby shoes on his dessert plate. His face lit up in a way I hadn't seen in months, and he picked me up, spinning me around the kitchen. "This is it, Bethany. This is the beginning of everything," he whispered. The pregnancy was difficult with severe morning sickness that lasted well into my 2nd trimester. But Michael was attentive, taking late-night trips for the only foods I could keep down and rubbing my back during the worst of it. When Lily Elizabeth Williams was born after 22 hours of labor, the look of awe on Michael's face as he held our daughter for the first time made all the struggles worthwhile. The first 3 years with Lily were like living in a dream. She was a happy, bright child with my love for music and Michael's analytical mind. She started humming melodies before she could talk, and by age 3 she was picking out simple songs on the small keyboard Michael bought her. We took family vacations to the beach, built snowmen in our yard during Colorado winters, and created a life filled with love and laughter. But as Lily turned 3, I began noticing subtle changes in Michael. His work hours grew longer and business trips became more frequent. He'd miss dinner coming home long after Lily was asleep. His phone was constantly buzzing with messages which he'd check immediately, often stepping out of the room to respond. "It's just a busy period," he'd explain. "This big client needs constant attention. It'll calm down soon." I tried to be understanding. His career supported our comfortable lifestyle after all. But then came the other signs: the new cologne I didn't recognize, the sudden gym membership, the unexplained gaps in his schedule. Once I called his office during a supposed late meeting, only to be told he'd left hours earlier. When confronted, he had plausible explanations for everything. The cologne was a gift from a client. The gym was for stress relief. He'd left the office to get dinner before returning to work. His calm, logical responses made me feel paranoid for even asking. I pushed my suspicions aside, focusing instead on raising our beautiful daughter. Lily was the center of my world with her infectious giggle and boundless energy. She had Michael's eyes and my curly hair, and a spirit that seemed to brighten every room she entered. "Mommy, when I grow up, I want to play music for everyone in the whole wide world," she told me one night as I tucked her in. "I think you will, sweetheart," I replied, having no idea that her time to grow up would be stolen from us both. The day everything changed started like any other. Lily and I were at the neighborhood playground on a crisp autumn afternoon. She was running around with her usual energy, her curly ponytail bouncing with each step, when suddenly she stopped and sat down on the ground. "I'm tired, Mommy," she said, her usually rosy cheeks pale. I noticed bruises on her arms that I couldn't remember her getting. When I picked her up, she felt unusually limp in my arms. Something deep inside me, that primal maternal instinct, screamed that something was very wrong. Instead of going home, I drove straight to the emergency room. The next few hours were a blur of doctors' tests and growing fear. When the pediatric oncologist asked to speak with us privately, my legs nearly gave out beneath me. Michael had joined us by then, rushing from work when I called. "Your daughter has acute lymphoblastic leukemia," the doctor said gently. "It's a cancer of the blood and bone marrow." The words hit like physical blows. Cancer, bone marrow, leukemia. Our perfect 4-year-old daughter. It couldn't be right. "There must be some mistake," Michael said, his voice unnaturally calm. "She was fine yesterday. Running, playing, completely normal." The doctor explained that childhood leukemia often presents suddenly, and that while the diagnosis was devastating, the survival rates for children with all had improved dramatically in recent years. "We need to begin treatment immediately," he said. "The good news is that children often respond very well to chemotherapy." The first weeks after diagnosis were a nightmare of hospital rooms, medical terminology, and watching our baby girl suffer through treatments that made her sicker than the disease itself. Michael took time off work, initially sleeping in the uncomfortable hospital chair beside me, holding my hand as we watched Lily sleep between bouts of vomiting from the chemo. "We're going to get through this," he promised. "I'll do whatever it takes. Second opinions, experimental treatments, anything." For those first weeks, I believed him completely. I saw the love in his eyes when he looked at Lily, heard the determination in his voice when he questioned the doctors. But as the weeks turned to months, something shifted. Michael started returning to work first for a few hours, then full days. "Someone has to keep the money coming in," he reasoned. "These treatments aren't cheap, even with insurance." He wasn't wrong. Even with our excellent insurance, the co-pays and out-of-network specialists were quickly draining our savings. But it was more than financial pressures. Michael seemed to be emotionally withdrawing. He spent less time at the hospital, always with reasonable excuses about work deadlines or meetings he couldn't miss. I became Lily's primary caregiver, learning to flush her central line, manage her medications, and recognize the early signs of infection that could be life-threatening given her compromised immune system. My world narrowed to the pediatric oncology floor, with its bright murals trying to mask the gravity of what happened there. The first major crack in our marriage appeared 3 months into Lily's treatment, when Michael missed a crucial appointment with her oncologist. I'd reminded him repeatedly, emphasized how important it was, and he'd promised to be there. But when the time came to discuss Lily's response to the first phase of treatment, I sat alone trying to absorb complex medical information while fighting back tears of both worry and anger. When Michael finally called hours later, his excuse about an unavoidable client emergency fell flat. "This is your daughter's life we're talking about," I hissed into the phone, stepping into the hallway so Lily wouldn't hear. "What client could possibly be more important?" "That's not fair, Bethany," he replied, his voice tight. "I'm doing everything I can to keep our finances afloat while you're at the hospital. Someone has to think about the long term." His words stung like a slap. As if I was just in the hospital by choice, as if caring for our desperately ill child was somehow a luxury. After 6 months of aggressive treatment, we received the news we'd been praying for. Lily was in remission. The leukemia cells were no longer detectable. We celebrated cautiously, understanding that the journey wasn't over, that years of maintenance therapy lay ahead, but grateful for this critical milestone. For a brief period, our family life found a new normal. Lily's hair began to grow back, a soft fuzz of light brown curls. Her energy improved, though she tired more easily than before. We even managed a weekend trip to the mountains, a precious respite from hospitals and medication schedules. But the reprieve was short-lived. 3 months into remission, routine blood work showed irregularities. More tests confirmed our worst fear: the leukemia had returned more aggressive than before. By this point, Michael's presence in our daily struggles had diminished significantly. He was working later than ever, with weekend conferences becoming a regular occurrence. During one such weekend, when Lily was admitted with a dangerously high fever, I couldn't reach him for hours. When he finally called back, I heard music and laughter in the background that didn't sound like any business conference I could imagine. The exhaustion of being Lily's constant caregiver, combined with my growing suspicions about Michael's absences, left me emotionally drained. My parents offered to come stay with us, but pride kept me from accepting immediately. I wanted to believe Michael and I could handle this together, even as evidence mounted that we were facing it very differently. "Mommy, why doesn't Daddy come to the hospital anymore?" Lily asked one evening as I tucked her into her hospital bed. I swallowed hard, forcing a smile. "Daddy has to work extra hard right now, sweetie. But he loves you so much and thinks about you all the time." The lie tasted bitter on my tongue, but I couldn't bear to add to her burdens. As I sang her to sleep that night, watching the steady drip of chemotherapy entering her small body, I wondered how much more either of us could endure. My suspicions about Michael's behavior could no longer be ignored when I found a hotel receipt tucked in the pocket of his suit jacket while doing laundry. The receipt was for a weekend when he'd told me he was at a financial conference in Seattle, but the hotel was in San Diego. When confronted, Michael exploded with uncharacteristic anger. "Are you seriously checking up on me, going through my pockets like some kind of paranoid detective?" His face flushed red as he snatched the receipt from my hands. "The conference was moved last minute. I didn't think the specific city mattered given everything else we're dealing with." His explanation was plausible, but his reaction seemed extreme. For the first time, I felt afraid of my husband, not physically, but afraid of what his anger might be hiding. My closest friend Sandra, who had been supporting me through Lily's illness, gently voiced what I had been refusing to acknowledge. "Bethany, I don't want to add to your worries, but Michael's behavior isn't normal, even considering the stress you're both under," she said carefully over coffee in the hospital cafeteria. Most fathers would be living at the hospital with their sick child, not finding reasons to be away. I broke down then, admitting my fears. "I know something's wrong, but I can't deal with it right now. Lily needs all of my strength." As Lily's condition worsened, Michael's absences became more frequent and less explained. I discovered unexplained charges on our credit card, expensive restaurants I'd never been to, a jewelry store purchase I'd never received. Once, when he returned from a business trip, I caught the scent of unfamiliar perfume on his shirt before he hurried to throw it in the laundry. The most painful betrayal came when Michael missed Lily's 5th birthday. We'd planned a small celebration in her hospital room with her favorite chocolate cupcakes and a few presents. The nurses had decorated with pink balloons and streamers. Lily, weak from her latest round of treatment, but excited for her special day, kept asking when Daddy would arrive. "He's trying his best to get here, sweetheart." I assured her, checking my phone for the 100th time. Michael had texted that morning saying his flight from Chicago was delayed due to bad weather. But when I checked the flight status online, I discovered all flights from Chicago were running on schedule. By the time we sang Happy Birthday, Michael still hadn't arrived or called again. The look of disappointment on Lily's face as she blew out her candles was something I would never forget or forgive. That night after Lily had finally fallen asleep, my phone rang with an unknown number. When I answered, I heard a woman's voice ask, "Is Michael there?" Before I could respond, she hung up. The next morning, Michael finally appeared bearing an extravagant gift and full of apologies about canceled flights and dead phone batteries. When I confronted him about the flights running on schedule and the strange call, he became defensive. "You know you don't look so great lately, Bethany," he said, changing the subject abruptly. "Maybe you should take a break, get some sleep at home. You're becoming obsessed and paranoid." His words cut deep, especially because I knew how I looked. I hadn't slept properly in months, existing on hospital cafeteria food and quick showers in the cramped bathroom of Lily's room. Of course, I didn't look so great. I was watching our daughter fight for her life while he was God knows where. Weeks later, I found a text message on Michael's phone when he left it charging while showering. It was from someone named Amanda. "Miss you already. Last night was amazing. Can't wait until Chicago next week." When confronted, Michael claimed Amanda was a new colleague, and the message was about a successful client meeting. "You're reading things into innocent professional relationships because you're stressed," he insisted. "Maybe you should talk to someone about your anxiety." The gaslighting was subtle but effective. Between the emotional toll of Lily's illness and my increasing isolation, I began to doubt my own perceptions. The hospital social worker, noticing my deteriorating mental state, offered support sessions. "What you're going through would break anyone," she assured me during one session. "And it sounds like you're carrying this burden largely alone." I broke down, admitting how alone I felt. My daughter is dying and my husband is somewhere else in every sense. She helped me see that my suspicions weren't paranoia, that my feelings were valid, and that I needed to focus on Lily and myself right now. Michael's behavior was something I could address later when the more immediate crisis had passed. But as Lily's condition worsened, finding the strength to face each day became harder. The only thing keeping me going was her need for me, her trust that I would be there no matter what. When she asked difficult questions like why Daddy didn't visit much anymore, I protected her with gentle half-truths. "Daddy has to work so the doctors can make you better," I would say, hating myself for shielding him from her disappointment. One particularly difficult night after Lily had endured a painful procedure, she looked up at me with eyes too wise for her years and said, "It's okay, Mommy. You're enough for both of you." Those words both filled my heart and shattered it simultaneously. The beginning of the end came on a rainy Tuesday in April. Lily's oncologist asked to speak with me privately, and I knew before he said a word that the news wasn't good. After multiple rounds of aggressive treatment, the cancer was still progressing, spreading to her central nervous system. "We've exhausted our standard treatment protocols," he explained gently. "There are experimental options we could consider, but I need to be honest with you about their limited success rates in cases like Lily's." I refused to give up hope, researching experimental treatments and reaching out to specialists across the country. When I presented Michael with information about a clinical trial in Boston, his response left me cold. "Be realistic, Bethany. We've already spent a fortune on treatments that aren't working. At what point do we accept the inevitable instead of bankrupting ourselves?" The argument that followed was like nothing in our 8 years together. I couldn't believe he was talking about money when our daughter's life hung in the balance. For the first time, I saw him clearly stripped of the charming facade I'd fallen in love with. "This isn't about money," I screamed, my voice raw. "This is about our daughter. Your daughter." My parents arrived the next day, having heard the devastation in my voice during our phone call. My father, usually a gentleman, could barely look at Michael without his jaw clenching in anger. My mother took over practical matters, ensuring I ate and occasionally slept while spending hours reading to Lily or brushing her doll's hair when Lily was too weak to do it herself. Lily's decline accelerated with horrifying speed. The cancer was consuming her, and all we could do was manage her pain and try to make her comfortable. Through it all, she remained our brave, sweet girl, worrying more about my tears than her own suffering. "Don't be sad, Mommy," she would whisper, her once vibrant voice now thin and reedy. "The angels are waiting for me. They told me in my dreams." Michael's response to Lily's rapidly deteriorating condition was to announce an emergency business trip to Asia. "The Singapore office is in crisis," he explained, already packing his suitcase. "If I don't go, we could lose our biggest clients." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Your daughter is dying, Michael. She could be gone in days. Nothing is more important than being here." He avoided my eyes, continuing to fold clothes into his luggage. "I don't have a choice, Bethany. I'll have my phone. Call if anything changes." "If anything changes," I repeated, my voice rising hysterically. "You mean if she dies while you're gone? Is that the update you're waiting for?" Michael flinched but continued packing. Before leaving, he stopped briefly in Lily's room. She was sleeping, her breathing shallow, her tiny body lost in the hospital bed. He kissed her forehead and whispered something I couldn't hear, then left without looking back at me. The next 48 hours were a blur of increasing pain medication, whispered consultations with palliative care specialists, and watching the life slowly ebb from my beautiful daughter. My parents took shifts, allowing me brief moments to shower or close my eyes, but I refused to leave the hospital. I called Michael repeatedly as Lily's condition deteriorated, but his phone went straight to voicemail each time. I left increasingly desperate messages. "She's asking for you. The doctors say it could be hours. Please, Michael, whatever you're doing, stop and come now." No response. On what would be Lily's final night, I crawled into the narrow hospital bed beside her, careful of the tubes and wires, keeping her comfortable. I held her close, singing her favorite lullaby, a song about moonbeams and dreams that had soothed her since infancy. As the night deepened, her breathing became more labored. "I love you to the moon and stars and back again," I whispered in her ear, using our special phrase. Her eyes fluttered open briefly, a ghost of her beautiful smile crossing her pale lips. "Love you more, Mommy," she murmured, the words barely audible. Those were her last words. In the early hours of the morning, with her tiny hand in mine and my mother's supportive hand on my shoulder, Lily took her final breath. The silence that followed was deafening, a void where the sound of her breathing had been the center of my universe. The hospital staff were incredibly gentle, allowing me to hold her as long as I needed. I memorized every detail of her face, kissed her cooling cheeks, and whispered promises to carry her in my heart forever. Through my shock and grief, I tried repeatedly to reach Michael. After hours of unanswered calls, he finally responded with a text message. "So sorry. In meetings. Back soon." 5 words. 5 inadequate, cold words in response to our daughter's death. Something broke inside me, then a fundamental trust that could never be repaired. My devastation was complete. My world entirely collapsed. The hospital staff helped with the initial arrangements, providing resources and giving my parents time to support me through those first terrible hours. A kind nurse gathered locks of Lily's hair for me and made plaster casts of her tiny hands, memories I would cherish forever. As dawn broke on a world without Lily, I felt utterly alone despite my parents' presence. The one person who should have shared this unbearable grief was nowhere to be found. The one person who had helped create our perfect daughter had abandoned us both when we needed him most. The days following Lily's death passed in a fog of grief and necessary tasks. My body moved mechanically through the motions of funeral arrangements, while my mind struggled to accept the reality that my daughter was gone. Every decision felt impossible, laden with finality. Choosing the small white casket brought me to my knees in the funeral director's office. Selecting the dress she would wear, her favorite blue one with butterflies embroidered on the collar, left me gasping for breath in her closet. Placing her beloved stuffed bunny, worn thin with love, beside her for burial shattered what remained of my heart. Through it all, Michael remained unreachable except for brief, inadequate text messages. Dealing with major client crisis. Will be home as soon as possible. Trust you to handle arrangements. My parents, particularly my father, were incensed by his absence. This is unforgivable, my father raged after another day without Michael's return. No business emergency justifies abandoning your family at a time like this. My mother was quieter, but equally furious. Her usual compassion replaced by a cold anger I'd rarely seen. When he does return, he'll find his things on the front lawn, she stated simply. My friend Sandra became my rock handling phone calls. I couldn't face organizing food deliveries. I wouldn't eat and sitting with me through nights when sleep refused to come. It was Sandra who suggested I call Michael's office directly to at least confirm his whereabouts. What I learned shook the foundations of the life I thought we'd built. His assistant, clearly uncomfortable, eventually admitted that Michael wasn't on a business trip at all. He had taken vacation days, not emergency leave. The Singapore crisis she knew nothing about. That night after my parents had gone to bed in our guest room, I sat at our home computer and began methodically searching for answers. Our shared accounts, email, credit card statements, travel itineraries all held pieces of the ugly puzzle. In the trash folder of our shared email account, I found a booking confirmation for a luxury resort in the Maldives, a couple's package including private villa with plunge pool. The most recent credit card statement showed charges for couples massages, sunset cruises, and romantic dinners, all while I was holding our daughter's hand as she slipped away. My hands shaking, I searched social media for Amanda among Michael's work connections. There she was, Amanda Lawson, junior investment analyst at his firm, 26, blonde, and according to her profile, recently enjoying paradise with her unnamed companion. The final confirmation came when I called the resort, directly controlling my voice to sound calm and professional. Hello, this is Amanda Lawson. My boyfriend Michael Williams and I are staying in Villa 12. We've been having trouble with our booking confirmations, and I just wanted to check that everything's in order for the remainder of our stay. The cheerful receptionist confirmed that everything was perfect for their remaining 3 days and asked if they were enjoying the champagne breakfast delivered that morning. Actually, I said, could you send something to our room? Perhaps a photo of us from yesterday's sunset cruise? Michael's phone was damaged and we lost all our pictures. An hour later, an email arrived with the requested photo showing Michael and a young blonde woman toasting with champagne flutes on the deck of a boat, the sunset painting the sky behind them. Both were tanned, relaxed, and beaming at the camera without a care in the world. I sat staring at that image for what felt like hours, the contrast between their carefree happiness and my devastating loss too stark to process. Something shifted inside me. Then grief momentarily overshadowed by a cold, clear rage. The funeral home director, a kind man named David, had become a steadying presence in those terrible days. When I showed up at his office the next morning, eyes swollen but determined, he recognized something had changed. I need to move forward with the funeral, I told him firmly. Tomorrow, if possible. I won't be waiting for my husband's return. David nodded, asking no questions about Michael's continued absence. We can arrange that. A small private service. Yes, I agreed. Just family and close friends. Lily wouldn't have wanted a crowd of strangers. I spent that afternoon writing Lily's obituary, selecting photos for a memorial display, and choosing music that reflected her bright, beautiful spirit. I decided against informing Michael of the funeral details. If he couldn't be bothered to be present for her final moments, he didn't deserve to be included in honoring her memory. The morning of Lily's funeral dawned with a gentle spring rain that seemed fitting, as if the world itself was weeping for my loss. I dressed in a simple black dress that Lily had once said made me look pretty like a princess in a sad movie. The memory brought fresh tears, but also a fleeting smile at her perfect child's perspective. The chapel was small, but filled with those who had truly loved Lily, my parents, Sandra, Lily's preschool teacher, and several of her little classmates with their parents, nurses from the oncology floor, who had cared for her, and a few close friends who had supported us throughout her illness. Michael's parents had flown in from Florida, shocked and confused by their son's absence. We can't reach him, his mother said tearfully, hugging me tight. We had no idea Lily had taken such a turn. The last we heard, she was responding to treatment. I didn't have the heart or energy to explain Michael's deception to them. Let him face that music when he finally returned. Instead, I accepted their genuine grief and support, knowing they had always been loving grandparents to Lily. The service itself was both beautiful and excruciating. Lily's tiny white casket covered in pink roses and white lilies seemed impossibly small to contain all the joy and love she had brought into the world. The minister spoke of innocent lives returned to heaven too soon, of the special light children like Lily bring during their brief time on earth. When it was my turn to speak, I somehow found strength I didn't know I possessed. Standing before those gathered, I spoke not of cancer or suffering, but of Lily's laughter, her love of music, her kindness to other children in the hospital, and her boundless imagination. My daughter packed more love and joy into 5 short years than many people manage in decades. I said, my voice surprisingly steady. She taught me that bravery isn't about not being afraid, but about smiling through that fear. And she showed me that even in the darkest times there is always something beautiful to be found if you're willing to look for it. At the graveside, I fulfilled a promise I'd made to Lily during her final weeks. Taking out my violin, which I hadn't played since before her diagnosis, I performed her favorite melody, a piece she had called the Butterfly Song, because it made her imagine butterflies dancing. The notes soared into the spring air, carrying my love and grief upward with them. As others placed flowers on her casket before it was lowered, I placed her beloved stuffed bunny kept back from the funeral home at the last moment because I couldn't bear to part with it, and a letter I'd written expressing all the love I would have given her throughout a lifetime had we been granted that gift. After the service, there was a small reception at my parents' house. I moved through it like a ghost, accepting condolences and sharing memories when asked, but feeling increasingly disconnected from everything around me. The absence of Michael was palpable, with people carefully avoiding mentioning him after their initial awkward questions were met with vague responses. Several colleagues from Michael's firm attended briefly, bringing cards and flowers. Their discomfort was obvious, and I later learned they had been told Lily had died suddenly with no mention of Michael's vacation during her final days. When everyone had finally gone, leaving only my parents and Sandra at the house, I returned to Lily's room and sat amidst her toys, books, and clothes. Everything was exactly as she had left it before her last hospital admission, waiting for a return that would never happen. Her favorite stuffed animals arranged on her bedbooks stacked on her nightstand, half-finished art projects on her little desk. Sandra found me there hours later, surrounded by Lily's things, holding her baby blanket to my face, to breathe in what remained of her scent. "You need to rest, Bethany," she said gently, helping me to my feet. "Let me stay with you tonight. You shouldn't be alone." I allowed her to lead me to my bedroom, but sleep was impossible. Instead, I spent the night looking through photo albums, watching videos of Lily on my phone, desperate to hear her voice and see her smile again. The contrast between those happy memories and the cold reality of her absence was physically painful, a vice around my chest that made each breath an effort. During those sleepless hours, I also checked my phone obsessively. Michael had finally sent a text announcing his return flight would land the day after next. His message was casual, almost cheerful. "Heading home Thursday. Singapore issues finally resolved. Hope all is well." Hope all is well. As if our daughter's death was a minor household inconvenience he was checking in on. I didn't respond. Instead, I began formulating a plan, a cold determination replacing the paralysis of grief, if only temporarily. If Michael thought he could return to business as usual after what he'd done, he was about to discover how wrong he was. The next morning, I called Jason, a lawyer friend, who had offered his services for anything I needed. What I needed, I explained in his office later that day, was swift and decisive action to protect myself and honor Lily's memory. I want to document everything. I told him, spreading out the evidence I'd gathered of Michael's infidelity and abandonment. And I want to ensure he can't touch any of the money that should have gone to saving Lily. Jason reviewed the materials grimly, occasionally shaking his head in disbelief. "This goes beyond just grounds for divorce," he said. "This is abandonment during a family emergency. No judge will look favorably on his actions." With Jason's help, I spent the next 24 hours preparing for Michael's return. I legally withdrew half of our joint savings and checking accounts, changed the beneficiaries on my life insurance policies, and began the process of filing for divorce on grounds of abandonment and adultery. At home with Sandra and my father's help, I gathered all of Michael's personal belongings and moved them to the garage. Clothes, toiletries, personal mementos, electronics, everything that was exclusively his was boxed and removed from our home. I changed the locks and reset the security system codes. The cold efficiency with which I executed these tasks surprised even me, but the alternative was to collapse under the weight of grief, and Lily deserved better than that. She deserved a mother who would stand up for herself, who would ensure that the man who abandoned her would face consequences for his betrayal. As I worked, I thought constantly of Lily's final days of her courage in the face of pain, of her concern for my tears, even as she fought for each breath. If my 5-year-old daughter could face death with such dignity and strength, I could certainly face whatever came next. By the time Michael's plane landed the following day, I was ready. Michael returned home tanned and relaxed, a stark contrast to my exhausted, grief-ravaged appearance. He carried a small gift bag, presumably containing a souvenir from his business trip, and seemed genuinely shocked to find the locks changed on our front door. When I opened the door but blocked his entry, his confusion was almost comical. "Bethany, what's going on? Why are the locks changed?" he asked, attempting to step past me. "You're not welcome here anymore, Michael," I said, my voice eerily calm even to my own ears. "Your things are in the garage. You can take them and leave." His face cycled through confusion, irritation, and finally alarm as he registered the coldness in my eyes. "Is this about me being away when Lily—" He paused, seemingly unable to say the word, "died." "Lily's funeral was 3 days ago," I said flatly, "while you were enjoying couples massages in the Maldives with your mistress." The color drained from his face. "What are you talking about? I was in Singapore dealing with a client crisis. You know that." Rather than argue, I took out my phone and showed him the photo from the resort, his own smiling face staring back at him as he toasted the camera with Amanda by his side. That's not, you don't understand," he stammered, his confident facade crumbling. "I understand perfectly," I replied. "While our daughter was dying, while I was planning her funeral and grieving alone, you were on a romantic vacation with another woman. What exactly am I misunderstanding?" Michael's strategy shifted instantly from denial to justification. "You have no idea what I've been going through. The stress, the pressure. Watching Lily suffer for months knowing there was nothing I could do. I needed a break." His words ignited a fury I'd been containing for days. "You needed a break," I repeated, my voice rising. "Our 5-year-old daughter was dying of cancer. I was by her side for every treatment, every setback, every moment of pain. I held her hand as she took her last breath. And you needed a break." Michael attempted to push past me into the house, but I stood firm. "This is my home too," he said angrily. "You can't just lock me out. We need to talk about this rationally." "Your home," I laughed bitterly. "You lost any right to call this your home when you abandoned our daughter in her final days. And there's nothing to discuss. I've already emptied our joint accounts legally, taking my half. The divorce papers are being filed tomorrow." Michael's face contorted with shock and anger. "You can't do that." "I already have," I responded. "And before you get any ideas about marital assets, you should know that my lawyer has documented your absence during Lily's death and funeral your lies about your whereabouts and your affair with a subordinate at your firm. Would your bosses be interested in that information, I wonder?" His expression shifted from anger to panic. "Bethany, wait. Let's not be hasty. I made a terrible mistake, I know that. But we've just lost our daughter. We should be supporting each other, not tearing apart what's left of our family." The audacity of his appeal to family values after what he'd done was breathtaking. "What family, Michael? You destroyed our family when you chose a vacation with your mistress over being with your dying daughter." "Please," he said, his voice breaking in what seemed like calculated emotion. "I loved Lily too. I'm grieving too. I just couldn't handle watching her suffer anymore. I needed to escape." "So did I. I replied, unmoved by his performance. Every single day I wanted to run away from the horror of watching our daughter die by inches. But I didn't. I stayed. I held her. I sang to her. I made sure she knew she was loved every second she had left. Michael's face crumpled, real tears finally appearing. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Please, Bethany, we can work through this. I'll get therapy counseling, whatever it takes. It's too late for that, I said, feeling a strange calm settling over me. I need you to understand something, Michael. This isn't just about your affair. Affairs happen, marriages survive them. This is about you abandoning our daughter when she needed you most. This is about you leaving me to watch her die alone, to plan her funeral alone, to face the worst pain imaginable, without the support of the one person who should have been by my side. I took a deep breath, looking directly into his eyes. Lily deserved better than a father who disappeared when things got difficult. And I deserve better than a husband who could be so cruel and selfish at the moment I needed him most. Michael tried a different approach, his voice softer now. What about our memories, the good years we had? 8 years of marriage just thrown away. You threw it away, I corrected him. When you chose to leave your dying daughter for a tropical vacation with your girlfriend, that was your decision, not mine. As we stood in this tense standoff, my parents pulled into the driveway, returning from an errand. My father's face darkened at the sight of Michael, and he moved quickly to my side. Everything okay here? He asked, though his tone made it clear he was addressing me, not Michael. Michael was just leaving, I said firmly. He needs to collect his things from the garage and find somewhere else to stay. Michael looked from me to my father, apparently realizing he was outnumbered. This isn't over, Bethany, he said quietly. You're not thinking clearly. You're making decisions while traumatized. No, Michael, I replied. For the first time in years, I'm seeing things with perfect clarity. Now please leave before I call the police to have you removed from my property. When Michael still hesitated, my father stepped forward. You heard her. Get your things and go. Finally accepting defeat, at least temporarily, Michael moved toward the garage. As he began loading boxes into his car, I watched from the doorway, feeling nothing but a hollow sense of justice being served. Before driving away, Michael made one last attempt. I did love her, Bethany. I did love Lily. I met his gaze steadily. Not enough, I said simply and closed the door. The weeks that followed were a blur of legal meetings, paperwork, and the ongoing struggle to survive each day without Lily. The divorce proceedings moved quickly, with Michael offering little resistance once he realized how damaging a court battle would be to his reputation and career. It turned out that his firm had strict policies against supervisors, dating subordinates, and the threat of exposure led to both Michael and Amanda leaving the company. The relationship that had seemed worth sacrificing everything for apparently crumbled under the weight of real-world consequences and public scrutiny. 6 months after Lily's death, I stood in a small auditorium at the Children's Hospital where she had spent so much of her short life. Before me was a gathering of families, medical professionals, and supporters for the inaugural fundraiser of the Lily Williams Foundation for Pediatric Music Therapy. Using my portion of the divorce settlement and contributions from those touched by Lily's story, I had established a foundation to provide music therapy for children battling cancer and support for their families. It gave me purpose in a world that had lost its center. When Lily died, a way to channel my grief into something that would honor her love of music and help other children facing similar battles. Music was my daughter's joy. I told the audience, my voice steady, despite the emotion welling inside me. Even in her darkest days, it brought her comfort and expression when words failed. Every child deserving that comfort is Lily's legacy. The foundation quickly grew, partnering with hospitals across the state to develop music therapy programs. I returned to teaching part-time, working with children again, though now with a deeper understanding of the fragility and preciousness of every young life. Michael attempted reconciliation several times in those early months, each approach more desperate than the last, as his new relationship collapsed, and the consequences of his actions continued to unfold. His parents, horrified by what he had done, maintained a relationship with me, supporting the foundation and keeping Lily's memory alive. Through grief support groups at the hospital, I formed connections with others who understood the particular pain of losing a child. One of those connections was with James, a pediatric oncology nurse who had cared for Lily during her final weeks. Our friendship grew slowly, built on shared memories of Lily's courage and a mutual commitment to helping others through similar journeys. Each year on Lily's birthday, the foundation holds a memorial concert featuring child musicians and beneficiaries of the therapy program. It's both heartbreaking and healing to see other children finding joy in music, as Lily once did, to know that her short life continues to touch others. The pain of losing Lily will never leave me completely. There are still days when grief overwhelms me without warning, when a child's laugh that sounds like hers or the glimpse of a little girl with curly hair can bring me to my knees. But alongside that grief now lives purpose and even moments of joy. Michael's betrayal taught me that sometimes the people we trust most can fail us at our most vulnerable moments. But Lily's courage taught me something far more important: that love endures beyond betrayal, beyond loss, beyond death itself. In honoring her memory through helping others, I found that the human heart has an astonishing capacity to heal even from the deepest wounds. Not to forget, never to forget, but to carry forward with purpose and meaning. If you've stayed with me through this painful story, thank you for bearing witness to Lily's life and legacy. Have you ever had to find strength during an unimaginable loss? How did you find your way forward? Please share your thoughts in the comments below and subscribe to hear more stories of resilience through life's darkest moments. Remember that whatever challenges you're facing, you're not alone on the journey. Together we can transform even our deepest pain into purpose and healing.